Alright, so Booga, so you disagree with GT being part of the main continuity?
I already told you about this, bro. Of course I do, man.
Alright, that's cool. That's cool. Do you know the difference between an official sequel and a direct sequel?
What?
Do you know the difference between an official sequel and a direct sequel?
Are we going off the definition of those words, or are you referring to like some sort of like niche definition?
So basically, an official sequel and a direct sequel is that basically a direct sequel refers to a continuation of a story with the same progression and settings, and an official sequel refers to a story recognized by the creators and or copyright holders as a legitimate part of the story. Do you agree with that?
My mom interrupted me. Repeat like half of that.
The second part or the first part?
Second.
The second part. Okay. So an official sequel, right, is a story recognized by the creators and slash or copyright holders as a legitimate part of the story. What the fuck? This nigga just left. Why did that nigga leave? Anyway,
Did it not register? Yeah. Yeah, I heard you.
Alright. So, like I was saying, an official sequel refers to a story recognized by the creators and slash or copyright holders as a legitimate part of the story. Do we agree to those terms?
Okay.
Was that a yes, or is it just like an okay?
If you're asking to go with that definition, then sure.
So, do you know who the scriptwriter for Dragon Ball Z is? Okay, so
I don't know what you're asking.
we're talking about Takeo Koyama. I'm sure you know who he is, right?
Yeah, Taiko Koyama is a writer, yes.
Okay, cool. So, do you acknowledge the fact that he had confirmed that GT is the official sequel to the anime, the Z anime?
Sure.
Do you have anything to say to this?
I mean, I agree GT is canon. I don't think it means it's in the main timeline, though, or not, or in the super timeline, rather, because there's no real way to really identify the main timeline since there's so many of them, and I don't even think Dragon Ball Super is the longest one. But I mean, I agree it's canon. It doesn't mean it's part of the main timeline.
So that's just an admission fallacy because the full phrase is canon sequel. We're not just talking about something canon. We're talking about a canon sequel. And like you said, we agreed to the terms that an official sequel, which is the same thing as canon, by the way, refers to a story that is recognized by the writers and slash or copyright holders as a legitimate part of the story. So when Koyama is saying canon sequel, which is the same thing as an official sequel by definition, it means that it's within the same continuity, continuing the story of Dragon Ball Z.
No, I agree that it's the same continuity as Dragon Ball Z, and also Dragon Ball Super is the same continuity as Dragon Ball Z. This doesn't necessarily mean that it is the same continuity as Dragon Ball Super.
So that whole argument goes against what the Daizenshuu 7 says about the chronological timeline. Do you know what I'm referring to?
No, go ahead and send it.
Alright, so the scan here, the translation, this is referring to the chronological timeline. So it says when the universe was still in its early stages. I just want you to notice the term universe is not plural. It's referring to one history of the universe. So it says, now let's reveal the untold history of the Dragon Ball that has never been disclosed before. The grand history, that's singular, it's not plural, right? And the Daizenshuu 7 is expanded within the Chosenshu 4, which is what the timeline board uses to create the final. It's called the official timeline board by Shueisha, and it uses information from the Chosenshu 4, which expands upon the Daizenshuu 7, which only references one universe.
I mean, yeah, logically speaking, it does say, let's reveal the untold history of Dragon Ball and the universe. Dragon Ball Z really is only, well, I was about to say Dragon Ball Z is only one universe, but at the same time, there are multiple infinite-sized realms within the macrocosm. But we'll just assume that universe is just referring to, like, the continuity to make things a little bit more simple. Yeah, Dragon Ball Z would only be one universe under, like, what they're trying to say, right? But because they're referring to the universe being Dragon Ball Z, which then connects to Super and GT, I don't think that necessarily means, okay, these things are the same thing again. Because theoretically speaking, they would all both connect canonically to Dragon Ball Z, right? So you could obviously say that Dragon Ball Z is a universe, but it's not like they're referring to the entire timeline as one universe. The message is not necessarily saying that, it's more so saying what comes next will refer to the universe, and obviously it starts with Dragon Ball Z or Dragon Ball. I'm not really sure exactly where it starts, but either one of the two, I'm pretty sure. I'm saying that in here, it's referring, logically speaking, to Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z, which I don't think there's any particularly split timeline within there, right? And so you can technically argue that even if there are two timelines that branch out from this same one, meaning that they're all connected, right, they would still technically be part of one timeline if you argue that. But it doesn't necessarily mean the two branches, for example, are part of the same branch, is what I'm trying to get at.
So in that case, only two timelines would be in question because the Daisenshu already includes GT and the main timeline. So that wouldn't be referring to Dragon Balls like as a whole. If you're trying to say that the timelines are separately connected, but that doesn't mean they're in the same universe, even though the scan in question only mentions one universe in regards to the chronological history of the timeline in question.
I mean,
because
how?
Again, because the whole point of the scan is to refer to a single history. And if GT is included in the history, that obviously means that's a part of the same history that's in regards to Dragon Ball Z, and Dragon Ball Super, because that's what the official timeline history is for. It expands upon both of the Chosenshu 4 and the Daisenshu 7, which only mentions one history in one universe.
As I said, right? Basically, my argument here is because it says next doesn't mean everything that is in the causatic chain after is what it's in reference to. All it really says is means that it's the next thing, just the next thing.
The next event within the universe in question, yeah, it's referring to one universe.
Exactly. That's my point. This doesn't contradict my original premise, neither does it contradict yours.
That goes against the three laws of logic. But okay. But anyways, so you practically already conceded as referring to one universe, and GT is considered a unified chronology within this universe. So that already justifies my premise.
No, it doesn't. As I said before, yes, Super is technically part of Z, and GT is technically part of Z, but that doesn't mean that Super and GT are the one and the same.
Okay, I understand that, but you do know that it was confirmed by Toriyama and Toyotaro that Super is sequentially following the narrative of Dragon Ball End of Z and GT.
Show me.
Alright, so Booga, if you didn't notice, I sent the...
Yeah, I know you sent it. I was gonna assume maybe you'd send another one, maybe, but...
Yeah, I did. I sent both of them.
So your claim was that it's sequential to Super, and we've had this discussion before.
It's sequential to End of Z.
Okay, so Super is sequential to End of Z. Okay, that's your argument. Okay. The first one, a very huge problem, is that there's no actual proof that they're referring to the end of Z. Now, while they are saying the 10-year gap between the Majin Buu arc and the final event, right, this doesn't inherently now mean that this final event is Dragon Ball, or End of Z. Because End of Z, yes, it does take place 10 years after the Buu arc, right? But the thing is, there's also many other events that would logically take place, like just as a general law of like space-time or the universe. Like, say we have stars orbiting other planets, or, a nuclear atom, for example, experienced nuclear fission, or, the sun is burning up even more energy that it's doing. Like, there's many events. So this final event doesn't actually have any like direct correlation to anything even within Dragon Ball. It doesn't have to refer to that, because realistically we know that no series of Dragon Ball inherently just like ends, or we know what I'm trying to say is that we know that Dragon Ball doesn't inherently just like have an official ending continuing, right? Even after End of Z, it's continuing. So we don't have any evidence that it's really referring to End of Z here. For the second scan, I mean, this doesn't necessarily mean that it is going to be within the same timeline as End of Z. And even assuming it is within the same timeline as End of Z, I don't really see how you'd also correlate that to being in the same timeline as GT, because while GT does come after End of Z, yes, that is true, you could again also have the fact that Super also come after End of Z without actually having to be in GT, since, as I've already agreed with you, on Super and GT are both canonical, canonical achievements after Z. So, or Dragon Ball Z up to freaking Battle of Gods or whatever the frick. Not Battle of Gods, just so we're not going to confuse End of Z with Dragon Ball Z.
Alright, so first, I just want to let you know you kind of misread the first scan. When you said final event, you were right, it's not referring to End of Z. The final event part is in context to Superhero being the story just before the final chapter. So it's saying Superhero is the final event that occurs before the final chapter, which is in reference to End of Z, because in the beginning it says the 10-year gap between the Majin Buu arc, and the only event that we know that has the 10-year gap is End of Z. There's only one ending for Dragon Ball, which is the End of Z. That's why that's literally the only reason why they're nominally labeled it End of Z, because it's the ending of the story before GT ends, right? So again, the fact that they mentioned the 10-year time skip, which unironically is the same thing that End of Z says, it contextually refers to End of Z because there's only one End of Z. There's only one ending to Dragon Ball.
Right. It doesn't say final series. It doesn't say final episode of a series. It just says final event. And going off of End of Z, for example, End of Z isn't the final event because GT happens. Unless you want to say that GT doesn't exist, and then, I mean, we can end this debate here, but the scan isn't really referring to...
Final, okay, look, I already told you, you're focusing on final event. The thing is, final event is referring to superhero, and it says, the full sentence is that final event, superhero, is the story just before the final chapter. You know, the final chapter is in reference to the manga, which ends with End of Z.
I mean,
and your other point, wait, hold on. Your other point was that it can't really be the final chapter because GT begins. That is true, but the context is the final chapter is referring to the ending of a story in the beginning of another story, which is why it says the next time GT begins.
So you did say that the final event here is superhero, and the story is just before the final chapter. This does superhero, for example. What would it mean by superhero being the final event? I don't have to really ask you here. Like, this wouldn't really mean anything because of the fact that. Well, I'm just gonna give more light that would explain why you didn't explain that, I guess. Because of the fact that superhero being the final event, right, doesn't make sense because there's things that happen after superhero. Final chapter, right? Now, still doesn't really make that much sense because if you're talking about final chapter as in like the final story, part of the story of Dragon Ball Z, for example, and you start a new one, right? This wouldn't, if you're trying to say that GT is a different story and not the same story, this simply just means that GT and Z aren't connected, which we both disagree with. So the only logical conclusion here that we can make is that this can be referring to any event. And this could, for all we know, this could refer to frickin' Pan growing up. This can frickin' refer to Chi-Chi screaming at Goku. Heck, for all we know, this could be referring to two hydrogen bonds occurring in the universe. Like, we don't know.
Okay, let me explain this to you narratively. So, you do agree.
What the fuck is this nigga yapping about? What the fuck?
Alright, hold on. So, Booga, you do know that final event narratively means that there is an ending to every single arc, right?
I mean, if we assume that, then it would simply just refer to the ending of Majin Buu, which would just debunk everything you're saying, so...
It's saying final event in the sense that it's ending the arc in question, which is the Granola arc. And then after that is End of Z, which is the final chapter before GT begins. I told you this 5 times.
You said that superhero happens?
Steezy, I'm not gonna step on your toes. I'm just gonna ask you something because I got him muted. What are y'all discussing?
GT's canonicity to Dragon Ball Super.
Okay, and what are you saying?
You mean the premise or the argument?
Both.
Both. Basically, no. So yeah, you already know the premise, but basically, he said, he agreed that GT is canon to DBZ and Super is canon to DBZ, but that doesn't mean that GT is canon to Super. And then I
Right,
just
some
sent him
retard
this.
shit, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. That was basically it. And then I sent the scan where Toriyama literally tells you that superhero is sequentially following the episodes that occurred during the 10-year gap between the Majin Buu arc and the final event,
Right.
which is the story just before End of Z.
And they
then
have
I
the
told them,
screenwriter for Z confirming that GT is the direct sequel to like Dragon
yeah.
Ball Z. Yeah.
And then I told them the fact that it's specifically referring to the 10-year gap between the Majin Buu arc is the same thing that the beginning of End of Z tells you in the manga. It says chapter 518, and so after 10 years, the cast 10 years later, after the Majin Buu arc, there is only one original ending to Dragon Ball Z, so that's the only thing it can be in reference to.
The end of Z is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And what did he say in reference to that? I already know he doesn't want certain characters to grow up, but like as far as an argument goes, like what does he say?
So he's saying final event or final chapter. I'm pretty sure it was final event. He's saying it wouldn't make sense to say final event because we know that there are other stories that begin afterwards, and then I told him that final event is just in reference to the ending of an arc and then the beginning of a new arc. Because we obviously know that every arc has an ending.
Fucking duh. Like, what else could it be? Like, fucking Dragon Ball Online happens in Age 1000. Like, obviously, it's referencing the arc, yeah.
So, yeah, Booga,
Alright.
you can...
Are you done?
Go ahead.
Are you done yapping with clocks? Okay, finally. Actually, I think you were
I
in
got
the
him at
middle of your
50%.
Steezy. I think you were in the middle of giving your argument before clocks interrupted. So just continue.
That was my argument.
Oh, okay. But yeah, like, anyways, like, as I said
So
before,
I didn't interrupt
I think
anything? Oh, shit. Retard moment. Okay. Yeah. Go.
Clorox, I told mute up. Actually, can you just mute Clorox in general, bro? Like, genuinely speaking, he's gonna keep interrupting me.
This is a student versus student. I have to witness this happen. This is very exciting.
Okay. Anyway, so as you said before, right? You will reference the 10-year age gap, right? You reference that End of Z is what is also stated to be a 10-year gap. I don't disagree with that. This doesn't now necessarily mean it's referring to End of Z, right? The final event being superhero in no way would make sense if you're talking about it being the ending of an arc, for example, and it's referring to the granola arc. Superhero, right, extends after the granola arc as well. It takes place during is yes, but at the same time it ends after the granola arc ends. So logically speaking, it can't really be referring to the granola arc if saying the final event is superhero. Well, then, logically speaking, like the ending of an arc and then the story just for the final chapter, it would just be referring to whatever chapter is next within the Dragon Ball Super manga, which is obviously going to be before GT if you're trying to argue that GT is also after that. So it can't be referring to that. Or End of Z, rather. Sorry, instead of GT, End of Z, sorry. So realistically, this first scan is kind of a nothing burger. 10-year gap.
So you just repeated the same claim I just refuted, but first of all, you said your first problem was that saying that superhero occurs during the granola arc, but you already agreed pure that it's after the granola arc, so that's already just another conflicting conditions. And second of all, you repeated the claim that's already in question. Like I said, final event is just a reference to narratively the ending of an arc, and while it says that superhero is a story just before the final chapter, that connectively means that superhero is ending to the granola, no, not ending to the granola arc, after the granola arc while ending, and it's starting the Dragon Ball Z ending. So you just keep repeating the same claim.
Mommy!
What? What? Yo! No, I just got
My
that
mom
on
just
recording.
believes.
No, it's actually
Say
no.
this, say this, say this,
This
say
nigga
this,
said,
say this.
"Mommy."
Say this, say this, say this, say this, say this.
I'm saving that
Say
shit.
this,
Yo,
say this is
no
right now,
way.
say this right now, say this right
Yo,
Okay, okay, Steezy. So, okay, I'm just gonna we kind of cut to the chase here, right? The main burden
And he
that
left
I'm really
like a
trying to
little bit
place on you right now
afterwards.
is trying to prove that by what it says about 10-year gap or the final event before whatever final chapter or whatever the frick, you need to prove that any of these refer to end of Z. Where is the evidence simply just from the scan that it's in reference to end of Z and it's in reference to GT? Because of the fact that if we assume,
Wait,
okay,
Stacey,
the
where are the
final
scans that
chapters
you
for
sent?
Super.
I'm looking for those.
which one?
Where'd you send the scans about that you were telling me about in the like in here?
What?
Like where in
Oh,
here are the scans that you were sending?
it's in general.
In general, right? But
What?
Yeah, so Booga, the evidence was already given to you a while ago, so I can just dismiss your point.
I'll put this up on the screen just because.
I mean, you claim the evidence was given to me, so I'll just address everything you've given to me and say why it's not evidence. You've shown me that, end
Here,
of
I
Z
got it
is
on
a
the screen right now.
is a 10-year gap, right? You've shown me that Z is a 10-year gap. You've shown me, okay, the scan of this being the case, etc., etc., etc. No, but what I'm trying to touch you to prove is to prove, okay, that this thing in question is the 10-year gap that they're referencing in the scan is end of Z. Because yes, end of Z is a 10-year gap, doesn't necessarily mean that the specific is the one it's in reference to.
Ooh, he conceded.
I wasn't here the whole time, so I don't know.
Basically, he wanted me to prove that the 10-year reference is in context to end of Z, and he already conceded that it was.
On this page.
Wait, what do you mean the 10-year whatever?
So you know how end of Z is a 10-year skip to the Majin Buu arc?
Past the Majin Buu arc, yeah.
Try to link again.
Yeah, so you know the Toriyama scan for the superhero movie where he says that Super has to be sequentially following the significant episodes that occurred during the 10-year gap between the Majin Buu arc.
Yeah.
So he said that could be in reference to anything because it doesn't specifically tell you what event's talking about. But then again, the Toyotaro scan already establishes that it's referring to the original Dragon Ball Z ending.
Yeah, let me read it. It says we are preparing the ground to direct Dragon Ball Super into the original Dragon Ball Z ending.
Wait a minute.
I wonder what pops up when I search up original Dragon Ball Z ending. I'm just curious.
Whatever. To be honest, Steezy, Clorox is increasing my ping by thousands. That's the first thing I'll make the point of. Clorox being ignorant to this, having ignorance of the conversation is causing him to constantly interrupt. I don't want him in stage.
No, I was just asking. I was asking Steezy something. That's all.
I see them in the Z in the middle. Oh my god, is that Oob?
Bro.
Oh my god, I wonder where he's from.
What?
10 years later. Oh, isn't that funny? Oh, well.
What are you talking about?
I'm just streaming something. I asked Steezy a question. I was like, what burden, because I wasn't here the whole time. I was like, yo, Steezy, what burden was placed on you by the pedophile that you had to uphold?
I'm not a pedophile.
And then he said that he had to uphold the stance that it was like 10 years later, you put into question could be referencing anything besides the ending, even though without positing what it possibly could be referencing, he still fulfilled it by saying it was referring to the original Dragon Ball Z ending via these 3 scans. And yeah, it's pretty blatant. It says Toyotaro had this to say: we are preparing the ground to direct Dragon Ball Super into the original Dragon Ball Z ending, which refers to the end of Dragon Ball Z. Isn't that funny? And then you have the ending of Dragon Ball Z, the manga, and it's talking about the cast 10 years after the Buu saga. Isn't that funny? And when I searched it up myself, what I get is the same thing.
Okay. Steezy, I'm not discussing with Clorox, so I'm not going to address what Clorox said that you're trying.
Well, you just asked what I said. You just asked me a question, so. And now my 5 minutes is up, and I will put him back on mute.
Whatever. I'm ignoring everything that Clorox is saying. I'm not going to respond to whatever he's referring to. I'm referring to you, right? If you're trying to say that you fulfilled the Dragon Ball Z burden by the second scan, even though the second scan isn't in reference to the first scan, that obviously would be a non sequitur. If you're trying to say that it's in reference to the Z ending just because the Z ending is also 10 years afterwards, I already addressed that because there's also many events that would happen after it, right? Or after that Majin Buu arc, sorry, right? I'm saying what is the scan referencing, or any proof the scan is referencing end of Z, GT, or anything of the lines when they say 10 years after the Majin Buu arc. You originally said that it's referring to the final event,
Final chapter.
Okay, even so, where in the scan would that imply anything about End of Z? The scan is not connecting to any franchise at all other than what is mentioned in the scan, right? They're not referencing anything outside of the scan unless you can prove they're referencing something outside of the scan, right?
So, first of all, I just want to let you know that Toyotaro at this moment does not have any authority to tell you anything about what story is going to be continued or not. So he has to adhere to everything Toriyama has to say about it. So it is Seguitar. The two scans are Seguitar. And again, Toyotaro is saying that they're preparing to grant a direct Dragon Ball Super to the original Dragon Ball Z ending, which explains why Toriyama is referencing the 10-year gap between the Majin Buu arc and the final event, which is End of Z, because that's the only part of the mainstream content for Dragon Ball that we know of that has a 10-year time skip. So again, the burden was already fulfilled. You're just repeating your argument over and over again. You're not contending. You're not giving me a defeater.
See, I've already contended both of those. Not the first one. The first one's new. But I've contended the argument you've said before, right? That's why I keep repeating it, because you keep repeating it, which also means that I have to repeat my contention over and over again. As I've said before, you are saying that it's referencing something 10 years arc. You're saying that there's nothing within the main timeline that happens 10 years after the Buu arc, other than End of Z. This is false, because we know that these would also be moving. The clouds still move in Dragon Ball. The sun still burns off radioactive energy. The sun still gives off light. People in Dragon Ball still walk. The grass is still being blown by wind. These are other events that we know would obviously happen, right? So, unless you're trying to argue that there's no more atomic structure within the timeline, and therefore you wouldn't have any space-time continuum at all, and therefore there wouldn't be any timeline. Therefore,
what the fuck? What?
To your claim that what is it called? The second scan is in reference to the first scan. Just if we accept your interpretation that Totaro has to adhere to what Toriyama says, this doesn't mean it's in reference to this specific scan. Toriyama could have said to Toyotaro outside of this scan, hey, we're doing this thing, right? This doesn't name that it's in reference to this scan. So
That's just an equivalent possibility you can have.
Appeal to possibility. No. The thing is, if you're trying to say that this conclusion leads to another conclusion and it's absolute, but there's another possibility, then what you would be doing is a appeal to possibility, not me. If there's another possibility what this conclusion to lead to, that's simply that it doesn't have to lead to the conclusion you're talking about, and there are infinite other possibilities it could be talking about, so your possibility isn't even likely, right? So as I'm trying to tell you, it's talking about a 10-year gap from the Majin Buu arc. We know the sky still exists, the universe still continues to exist in our events, right? We also know that the second scan, right? The second scan really is just, it doesn't really mean anything at all without the first scan, and we have no evidence the second scan is in reference to the first. You just say it's in reference to what Toriyama said. Toriyama said many other things before, and Toriyama obviously would have contacted Totaro in separate to public information, right? So I don't really see what you're trying to get out here. There's no evidence here. Nothing burger at all.
Alright, so first of all, you're presupposing that the possibility in question is validated, even though you never gave an external validation to that presupposition in question. So that can already be dismissed. Second of all, again, so you already agreed to the fact that Toriyama has no authority to say what story continues off of this without Toriyama having to tell him what it is. So the fact that Toriyama is already saying that Super is following into the original Dragon Ball Z ending has to what Toriyama is saying about the 10-year gap, because that's the only story that has a 10-year gap. That's literally the only thing we know that has a 10-year gap within the main content of Dragon Ball's main continuity. So again, the possibility where this is false, you're just presupposing that that's the case, even though you never gave any evidence to that. All you're saying that it's conceivable, which I agree to, but you're still assuming that it is the case. So again, I'm just gonna place the burden on you to prove that possibility being true.
Alright, Steezy, are you able to talk?
What?
I disconnected again.
Alright, so I'll just repeat everything I just said. So first of all, you're presupposing that the possibility is true in question, but the thing is, you never gave any external validation to that in question, the thing in question, right? So I'm just gonna place the burden on you to prove that that possibility is true. All you said was that this possibility is conceivable, which is true, but just because something is conceivable does not mean that it is objectively true.
It is a non sequitur to say that objectively, unless there is even more evidence to suggest that this line of text is in reference to the first line of text. That's all I'm saying.
Alright, so for one, that's a strawman of my argument. I never said that Toyotaro was intentionally trying to parallel what Toriyama said within the scan in question. I'm saying both of their statements say the same thing. Verbatim. That's what I said. I never said that Toriyama was intentionally trying to parallel the scan in question. All I said was it says the same thing.
No, they don't.
Hold on. Wait, I'm not done. I'm not done. I'm not done. No, actually, no. I'll just... Yeah, so first of all, yeah, they do say the same thing because, again, the 10-year gap... What... So you're saying it doesn't necessarily have to mean end of Z, but that kind of assumes that there are other events within the main continuity that have a 10-year time skip, which there isn't any, because the only time skip that we know of that has a 10-year gap is end of Z within the main continuity. So that's the only thing that can be referenced to if they're talking about Super and end of Z, because as we know, Super is part of the main continuity.
So are you saying that atoms continue to exist? Are you saying time doesn't continue to exist? Are you saying that the sun stops getting lighter?
No, I'm not. That's a nice strawman, by the way, so...
No, because you said there's no other event that happens after 10 years. I'm giving you other events that happen. You said it was strawman, or that I'm giving you other events. You're saying that don't happen, so you're saying that's strawman, so you agree that these events happen. Okay, so there's other events that happen with this 10-year age gap, the 10-year gap. So why would, out of all of these events, right, would it be referring to end of Z specifically? That's what I'm trying to tell you.
I already extrapolated upon that point.
No, you didn't. You just said that
yes, I have.
No other event.
But anyways, I never disagree with the fact that time is progressing. I just want you to let you know that. I never disagree with that. I'm saying there is no direct event.
That's another event. There you go. You conceded. That is another event. So prove that it's referring to end of...
Oh my god, this nigga trying to talk over me like a retard. But anyways, like I was saying, I never disagree with the fact that they didn't grow. I'm saying there is no known arc between the 10-year skip. There is no arc between that.
Why would an arc be relevant? Please tell me in any way.
Because every mainstream of Dragon Ball has an arc.
So you're saying that the time progressing within the 10 years, for example, right? This thing, for example, right? It doesn't have an arc. Are you now saying that the time progressing didn't happen?
No, that's not the same thing.
Wait, so, Steezy, are you trying to say that the 10-year statement is valid and referring to Dragon Ball Z's ending because Toyotaro directly states this and he has no authority except he has to cooperate with what Toriyama was doing as the artist of Super? Or are you saying there's no other 10-year time skip notably that is outside of this that can be referenced by virtue of this?
Yeah.
Do you want like a visual representation of like a timeline of ages to point out why there's no other like 10-year time skip that could be referencing?
Oh my.
Yeah.
Oh my. Clorox is still.
I'm just asking a question. I'm just asking a question because we can pull up the Dragon Ball timeline right now if that's what you want, Steve.
Clorox Steel, man, the frick out of your argument. Oh my freaking. That makes this 10 times harder. But
all I did was ask Steezy a question about his argument. All I did was ask Steezy a question about his argument, and he answered.
He said yes because it's better. Whatever. Let's assume that.
Can you prove that? Can you
No,
prove
he asked me this question
Can you
before my
prove it?
argument was, and I agreed to it because it was my argument. I mean, this is all in the recording, man. We can go back to it if you want to.
That's not what you said. Okay, let's assume that this is what you said. That it's notably.
Why are we assuming it? It is what I said.
Hold on. Let's assume that you said, right? I'm not going to base you on whether you said this or not, right? Let's assume that you say that notably the only event that happens between the 20-year gap is end of Z, right? The scan isn't referring to notably. It's not referring to what's notable. It's not referring to what's written already. You know why? Because they're saying we're sequentially following the episodes. They are currently making more content. Obviously, the more content that is made in the future in real life is not something that is noted. Therefore, it is not just in reference to things that are noted, right? So because
it says significant episodes that occurred. That's a past tense, you fucking retard. Anyways, so the only arcs, the two arcs in question is Majin Buu arc and End of Z. So again, there are no other arcs that happen between that, which is why it's a 10-year skip, you fucking retard.
It's not saying it's referring to an arc. You keep claiming this. You also said that occurred we're sequentially following the significant episodes that occurred. Occurred would be past tense, yes, but following is present tense, Steezy. Thanks for the English lesson. So they are.
Yeah, Super is following the events of End of Z. Thank you.
No. Even this is irrelevant, so we're not even going to get into that.
No, it's not. That's what's in question, you fucking retard.
No.
What do you mean it's irrelevant? What's in question? Fuck?
No. The point that's in question right now is if the 10-year gap is referring to End of Z. If Super sequentially follows End of Z. No, Super sequentially following End of Z is not the same that the End of Z happens within the scan is referring to the 10-year gap.
Yo, I can't.
He's being purposely stupid just to appeal to rhetoric, and you know that Clorox is going to appeal to rhetoric as well.
Rhetoric. Oh my god, it's so fucking cool.
So this is also going to be something that I'm. Anyways, Steezy, right? This is really hard to actually get inside of your head. Let me try and just argue this in the most simple way I can, right? Sequentially following the episodes that occurred during the 10-year gap between the Majin Buu arc and the final event superhero. You're trying to say, okay, so the first End of Z. Your evidence for this is that the only arc that we know that is noted happens in End of Z. Okay, yes, but that point becomes irrelevant because of the fact that the scan is not things that are noted. Following, obviously, your episodes are currently made, means not publicly noting that, okay, this scan is not just referring to this. So because of this being the case, this refers to literally anything, as well as the fact, right, that you also, before Clorox Steelman your argument, you also again made the point that it's the only event that happened. Again, you also agree that that the character's growing also happened. That is an event as well, Steezy. I don't know what else to tell you, but event 10-year gap, things that happen, we know many things that happened during the 10-year gap, some of which actually occur at End of Z and would have occurred if End of Z still didn't exist because characters in time grow by virtue. I don't know what to tell you, Steezy. This scan is a nothing burger. As well as the second scan, Clorox claims, it directly says that, okay, what happens after...
I didn't make any claims, I just asked Steezy a question.
You asked him a question.
See, what you're not going to do is use your pedal power magic on me. You're not going to do that.
No.
Low-key, Clorox, he's just repeating everything I already attacked.
Yeah. Here, I pulled up the official Dragon Ball timeline. Take a look at this. If this is what you want to write, Steezy. Age 784, May 7th, the 28th World Martial Arts Tournament takes place, and Goku leaves with Buu to train him. And then
You keep claiming that you debunk the argument, yet I'm literally going off of what you said.
Because again, my argument was referring to notable arcs, and you keep saying fucking the time is progressing, which is obviously true.
Okay,
But I'm not referring to that. I'm referring to notable arcs, which is Majin Buu and End of Z, and you're not refuting that. You're just making your own fucking point, you fucking retard.
I just did. Do not listen. I just said that the scan isn't in
No, you
reference to
didn't.
notable arcs. If I in reference to that, then it is a red herring. What do you not understand?
He's getting mad.
Multiple. Frick.
okay, age 774, May 7th, the 25th martial arts tournament takes place. Goku returns to every single day to compete. This was a Buu saga, okay. So exactly 10, so what happened, so the martial arts tournament happens on May 7th every year. And 10 years later, Budokai happens in 784, my fault.
He's saying I didn't attack that. He says that it's only referring to notable events, yet I've already said that he's referring to that. That would be a red herring because Skin does not reference notable events. He's not listening to me.
He's just playing with you to annoy you.
I hope that's the case, but it is.
Who the fuck is that?
Who was that? What the f-
Is that your mommy?
It's my look.
Oh my god.
It's my business. Shut up.
It's my sister.
Shut your bitch ass up, hoe ass nigga. I'm not talking to you with your fucking ugly ass. The fuck?
I know you're not talking.
Shut your ugly ass up, nigga. Fuck ass nigga. Who the fuck? Shut your goofy ass up, boy. Your relative's a pedophile. Be ashamed of yourself. Your relative's a pedophile. Fuck ass nigga.
Oh god, it is a
You like little girls. You like little girls.
Oh god, it is a pedophile. Oh shit. Oh, my son is a pedophile.
No, I'm not.
Freak ass boy.
Yes, you are. You like to touch little kids.
Freak ass diddler boy.
I don't do that. I know, like...
You should be in jail with P. Diddy.
But I didn't do anything... I didn't do anything illegal, so I shouldn't be in jail. Thank you.
That's what Diddy said. Anyways, yeah. Yeah, so what were you trying to say, really, Steezy? Be corroborated by the timeline of events, and this is the only 10-year time scale that could be recurring between the Buu arc and the end of Z. Because 10 years later, on the same day after the Buu arc, Goku is with Oob at the end of Z and enlisting in the tournament.
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to know.
Yeah, that was refutation, and he just started repeating his argument.
No,
Ooh,
I said an argument. You claim that I didn't respond to it. I did to you, and you still don't acknowledge the argument. I don't know what to tell you, Steve. It's not a good thing.
Because you're not tracking your argument.
I'm fully tracking. I'm
No, you're not.
saying what you said in response, and literally refuting that. I'm literally quoting what you said, saying what you said, and being.
Well, here's the problem. Anyways, so like I said, the argument was about notable arcs, which is Majin Buu and End of Z, and then you started talking about whether or not time was progressing, which is like fucking obvious. But the point is, we're talking about notable arcs, and you keep saying they grew up, which is not what the fuck I was even talking about.
Do you know what I said in reference?
tracking.
Do you know what I said in reference to that? Do you know what I said in response to that? Please say what I said in response to that. If you don't,
You said time was progressing, therefore events did occur, which I never disagreed with to begin with. I was talking about notable arcs. I wasn't even talking about what you said.
Okay, that is not what I said in notable arcs. That is incorrect, Steezy. What I said
Yes,
in
you
response to notable arcs, no. What I said in response to notable arcs is that the scan isn't in reference to notable arcs. Therefore, the notable arcs are a red herring. Did you just not hear that? Did that slip through your head? Slip through your ears?
Red herring.
Are you dead?
So Toyotaro's statement about original Dragon Ball Z ending is not a reference to End of Z. Do you know what the original Dragon Ball Z ending is?
We're not talking
Because
about.
Clark's already looked it up for us. I mean, it's kind of blatant, bro. I don't know what you're trying to do with your fucking pedophile fantasies and shit, but
We're not talking about the Toyotaro scan. We're talking about the Toriyama scan. Thank you.
they say the same thing.
No, they don't.
It doesn't matter which scan it is. They say the same thing.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do, because a 10-year gap and original Dragon Ball Z ending is the same thing. The original Dragon Ball Z ending talks about the same 10-year gap. It's the same thing. I don't know what kind of little kid fantasy land you're looking at right now, but
10-year age gap and end of Z is not the same thing in regards to value. Yes, the end of Z
And
is
your age gap. Whoa. Whoa.
What did I say now?
Whoa.
Yo.
What? Alright, y'all need to... Anyways, so you did say that the end of Z is a 10-year gap. Okay, you said it, but you're trying to say they're the same thing. I'm trying to tell you, no, it isn't. You know, because there's other things that happen. Which we both agreed
So
with.
what's the 10-year gap talking about in the first scan? You want to tell me what that is?
I don't know. What's the 10-year gap talking about? I gave you the burden to
He's
prove
done
that
like
it
this
is
kid touching us. He's done like this.
So he said he already gave you the burden.
Clorox out of here. Get Clorox out of here. Telling you just keeping it right. Get him out of here.
I want to interrupt here. Yeah, I got you.
Anyway,
I gotta do something anyway. Hold on.
Alright, so cool, Booga, go ahead, continue.
You were talking. Continue.
The only thing I remember was that you told me I have a burden. I just want you to clarify what that is real quick. Because I'm pretty sure I already validated my burden.
The burden I told you to prove is that the thing that it happened 10 years after the Boo arc is end of Z. You claim that you proved that.
Okay. So you said to prove the 10-year skip after the Majin Buu arc, right? That's what you said, right?
Okay.
So again, this just goes back to the part where I said there are only two notable arcs, which is Majin Buu and then it's End of Z. Have you ever read the Dragon Ball manga?
And that argument would be accurate, as I've already said.
No, it wouldn't. You told me to prove the 10-year skip is in reference to being after End of Z, and I just told you what it was. There are only two notable arcs, which is End of Z and Majin Buu. You have never read the manga.
I really don't care about what you just said or about the other thing.
Okay, cool. So that's just a concession.
No,
because you already told me to justify the burden, and that's literally what I just did. You told me to prove that the 10-year skip is referring to being after the Majin Buu arc, and I just told you the relevance between the chapters 518 and 517.
And
those are the only two notable arcs.
And as I've said before, to both of those arguments, you said multiple things. You're not going to say that you said multiple things. You said that the only arc was, what is it called? End of Z, right? I don't disagree with this.
But it's not arc.
It's irrelevant. I said arc, right? So, End of Z.
But that's not what I said. So that's just a straw man.
Wait. You said End of Z is the only notable arc.
I said Majin Buu and End of Z is the only notable arcs. It's a plural, you fucking retard. Anyways, go ahead.
Sorry. Outside of Majin Buu arc, then you say it's End of Z. I'm saying, okay.
Not outside, sure, after.
Whatever the frick. Yeah, do you want a cookie or something? That does not relevant. It's a red herring. I explained that it is a red herring. Because it's not just referring to notable arcs. We know that the only thing that the events that happen aren't just notable arcs. You already agreed time is progressing. The characters grow. You already agreed.
Time progressing is not an arc.
I didn't say it was. That's why I said that in general is irrelevant because this is still an event that happens. I already told you this.
Do you know what an arc is? It's a narrative recorded. It's a recorded narrative. You know what that means? That means events. No, it's not. It means events that are noted down. Notable, okay. That's what I fucking said. So again, the only arcs that we know of between chapter 517 and chapter 518 is the ending of the Majin Buu arc and the End of Z, which is 10 years after the Majin Buu arc, because that's literally what the first page of the beginning of End of Z says, after 10 years of the ending of the Majin Buu arc. So that already justifies the burden that you asked me to prove, which was what the 10-year was in reference to, and that's the ending of the Majin Buu arc.
Red herring refers to when someone brings up irrelevant information. Notable arcs that happen are not relevant information. You keep saying that they're relevant, and you're really not proving the case. So
Yes, I
go
did.
ahead.
The
How's your evidence of
burden
irrelevance?
you asked me to prove was between two arcs, which is Majin Buu and End of Z. Those are the two arcs you asked me to justify being for the 10-year skip. Those are the only two arcs you asked me for to prove. And I did that, so why are you saying they're not relevant? You sound fucking retarded. Do you have amnesia?
You think you prove that, yet as I've just responded to your evidence, big ol' red herring. Because it's not, it's not relevant. If
Alright,
I
cool.
were
So
to
that's just
say,
an argument by repetition. Anyways, I'm gonna save the recording and we can go look